All right, well, I'm Andrew Swanson. I am here with the band leader, composer, and bassist of Snarky Puppy here at the Roseland Theater in Portland, Oregon, the Rose City. And we want to get to know you a bit. We're going to ask you a few basic questions just about the band and about yourself. So let's get started. So how would you describe Snarky Puppy to someone who's never heard of you guys before?
I think you'd be safe calling it just an instrumental music ensemble, you know? I mean, because we use influence from musical styles from all over the world, and I guess the only thing that's consistent is that we don't have vocals, so I'd just say like instrumental music.
I'd say that's fair. That's I've heard all your guys' albums, and that encompasses just about everything. So
I mean, we have some records with singers on them, but they're like special projects.
the live stuff with Jacob Collier and
Yeah, right.
yeah,
The family dinner stuff.
yeah. So how'd you guys form?
It was just a college band. I just started a group in college with my friends, and it just kind of never stopped. So we were all jazz majors at UNT, except for Nate. He was like a percussion major, but yeah, just college buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty normal. I mean, I think that happens a lot. It's just most of the time the bands stop, but we didn't.
It just kind of happens that way, and it just evolves over time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of a segue into next couple questions. So you may or may not get this a lot, but what's the story behind the band name?
It's kind of like I didn't expect the band to last. I thought it was just going to be like kind of one gig or two gigs.
Oh, wow.
So I booked one in I booked our first gig in the basement of a pizza place, and I needed a name kind of last minute, and my brother had thought of naming a band Snarky Puppy, but then chose another name, and I just kind of it stayed in my mind as like a silly name, and so I just used it, and I put a dog on the poster because it's just easy to advertise like that, and then now we're stuck with it.
That's great. I feel like the best band names just come sort of out of thin air like that. There's not necessarily any rhyme or reason to them. It's just kind of spur of the moment things. I don't know.
I wouldn't
think that's
consider
cool.
ours to be one of the best band names.
Oh, hey, I think it's cool. So, and then kind of a segue into that. So, how's the group evolved over time stylistically with members coming and going? Because you guys have had obviously a lot of people come and go, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think every person brings their personality to the music, and because everyone else is listening, that influence stays even when the person leaves. So if a guitar player comes in and joins the group, they're going to be injecting their own kind of perspective on the music into the group, and then when they split, we retain that perspective. So it's interesting. It never stops growing.
Yeah. You guys have definitely, how many albums have you guys put out? Studio albums? At least around 10?
We have 12 records.
12, okay. Yeah. So sort of going off of that, what was the first decade like for the band before We Like It Here, which was sort of your breakthrough, so to speak? What were you guys touring? Were you guys playing shows a lot? Were mainly recording and writing? What were you guys doing?
We basically went on tour starting in 2005, I think, and then just kind of never stopped. Still haven't really stopped. I mean, some years have been heavier than others. I think our busiest year was about 200 gigs, a little less.
Wow.
And then, but pretty much every year is between 100 and 200 shows. Yeah, I mean, just touring and making records and just kind of having a very slow build, in terms of audience and all that kind of stuff. It's just been a very, very slow incline.
Do you guys think you were ready for the spotlight once We Like It Here? You got a Grammy for that, right?
We won a Grammy actually for the album before that, which was called, what was the album after it? Family Dinner Volume 1 was the first one. I think it was the album after I have no idea.
Silva?
Well, we got one for that
got one
too,
for that.
and then we got one for Culture Vulture, and I can't remember if those were three. I really don't know the order of our records.
I can't blame you. Music gets jumbled up in my head so easily.
Yeah, I don't
it's
know.
Chronological stuff.
I have no idea, but I mean, I guess We Like It Here is the record that people know us for the most, but it wasn't like we released it and everybody went crazy at all. It was we released it and kind of nobody really cared, and then this song Lingus kind of went viral, but it wasn't like we posted it and it went viral. I think it took a little bit of time. I think that was a record that people came around to very slowly. You know,
Very gradual process of discovery.
because when it's not like we had some major record label. I mean, it was just my little label, so it wasn't like we had someone marketing it and pushing it out. We just kind of like released it and put videos up.
That's right.
And I wouldn't say that I would still say that we're not really like in the spotlight, so to speak. I mean, our genre of music is so obscure that it's not like I walk into a restaurant and have to get a back table for fear of people recognizing. Like nobody knows, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I walk through our gigs. I could probably walk from the stage all the way to the back of the house and no one would recognize me, which is great.
Except for us.
Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, it's cool. I mean, even the people that are paying to see us, I don't think they look at us like in that kind of way. You know, I think it's just kind of like they just dig the music and they come and hang out, and it's not like, I don't think there's idolization or whatever happening. If that's a word. I don't think that's a word, but.
Well, it is now if it wasn't before, right?
Yeah.
So what prompted there was a mixed critical response to Culture Vulture with that coming out because of such the wide, diverse array of different sounds that went into that. How do you guys deal with criticism from the press, from fans, from people whenever you try to change your sound, like you did a bit for Culture Vulture?
I mean, no matter what you do, people are gonna love it and hate it.
Yep.
And most of the people will be somewhere in the middle, you know? And it's just kind of who has the pen, you know? I mean, I'm sure there's people who hate the record much worse than our worst criticism, you know? But they're just not critics, so we don't hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or like, you know, I mean, all you have to do is scroll through the YouTube comments.
Just go to forums online.
Yeah,
it's
and
pretty
see
easy to
how
find that
brutal, how brutal people can be, or you know. And I mean, I think it's important as artists that kind of like, I like to know what people are saying, but also kind of not really care too deeply about it. Like not.
You can't let it get to yourself.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like, man, I mean, you're the artist and they're the audience, and it's the nature of an artist-audience relationship that you lead as the artist. I mean, think about how many great records were. I mean, you can read record reviews of Zeppelin 2, you know, a band that never got a Grammy, you know, during their period of existence, and it's like there were critics that just like destroyed, like Rolling Stone, I think, destroyed Zeppelin 2, and it's like, imagine if they would have listened to that and gone, oh my God, Rolling Stone didn't like our record, so we have to change our approach, and then they never would have done Zeppelin 3 or Zeppelin 4 has it
exactly
the way, you know, and it's like, I mean, like, you make the music and let people say what they want, and it's easier said than done, but it's important to remember, I think.
Yeah, it's that, you know, the classic push and pull dynamic between what the artist wants to do and then what the fans want and what the label wants and all the different pressures.
Yeah, but the issue is that if you make art based on what you think, first off, you're making a lot of assumptions about what people like.
Yes.
We assume that we know what people like, but we actually don't really know what people like, you know? So then you make this assumption, oh, I'm going to make this record this kind of way so that the people will like me. And then imagine you make a record that you, in a way that you don't want to, and then people love it. Then what do you have to do for your next record? You have to keep doing the stuff that you don't want to do. So it's better to just do what you want, and then attract the kind of people who are predisposed to liking your essence. And then all you have to do for the rest of your life is just keep being yourself, and that's like a way better zone to be in. Once again, easier said than done, but you know, good to think about.
Yeah, I would definitely agree in the long run that's, you know, what most musicians would want to strive for, I think, especially with keeping a band alive for such an extended period of time. You guys have already been going for over 10 years now, so it's important to keep your own identity, I think. So we don't have too much more time, but I have to ask, since I'm a bass player myself, who are your biggest influences as a bass player, if you have any? Specific ones.
Yeah, if I had to do 5, I guess it would be like James Jamerson, Willie Weeks, Tim LaFave, Paul McCartney, and I would probably say Joel Smith, this really great gospel bass player. And then my 5th one, was that 5 or was that 4?
Oh, I
I'll
can't math.
Anyway.
I don't do math.
The last one, I would say it's a guy who plays keyboards. His name is Bobby Sparks. He actually plays in Snarky Puppy, and he's like my favorite key bass player in the world. Like his key bass playing has influenced my bass playing.
Bass and
yeah, like Moog. You know, I mean,
cool.
That's changed the way that I hear my instrument, even though it's different.
Cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. Just one or two more. What advice would you give to young jazz musicians, jazz composers, jazz performers?
I would say learn the tradition, but don't let that be the end of your journey. Like, it's kind of like twofold. You have to know where the music you're playing came from in order to innovate. But the innovation part is equally important, because the world doesn't need another bebop tenor player. You know what I mean? We've already had the best that ever lived, have already lived and died.
Exactly.
So it's like I would say that you really need to look back in order to kind of like push it forward.
Go backwards to go forwards.
Yeah.
You can't just make music out of thin air. Exactly. You have to have some foundation or influence to start upon.
Yeah, because people have already done so much, and if you kind of blow that off and just try to do your thing without any frame of reference, it can be like, it's kind of like you going to Italy and then like cooking somebody pasta when you've never like eaten pasta
You've
before.
never done it
You just
before,
know
yeah.
that it's tomato sauce and noodles, and you make it, and it's like people are like, dude, we've been doing this forever. We know what good tomato sauce is, or what good pasta is.
That's a good metaphor. I like that.
I mean, it's just you just need to know. You got to be informed, to in order to innovate. And I think all the greatest jazz musicians, when you think about Mingus or Miles Davis or Coltrane, it's like Herbie. They pushed music into totally new directions. But what did they do before they did it? They were a member of,
Started off in bebop or cool jazz or
right.
all
They were
those
a member
scenes.
of iconic, jazz groups. So I think it's important to have both.
Great. I guess what's your composition and songwriting process like? How does that work?
I make voice memos on my phone of like kind of just interesting ideas I have, whether it's a rhythm or a melody or a sound I hear on the street, and then I just kind of like save them all, and then when I'm ready to write a song, I go through my voice notes and find whatever inspires me in that moment and try to develop off of that. It's good, rather than putting the pressure on yourself to kind of like be a brilliant composer in the moment that you have free time.
Exactly. Yeah. You just kind of have to catch it in the spur of the moment, which is nice with today's technology, where you can just pull out your phone and do that. Just write down little memos for things.
It makes it easier, yeah.
Oh yeah. So you're live. Seems like you play the Fender Precision bass, the P bass a lot. Is that your kind of go-to weapon of choice, both live and in the studio?
Yeah, it depends on the gig. I mean, for Snarky Puppy, the P bass is the sound for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, when we did Culture Vulture, I did a few tunes on a Hofner.
Over like the Beatle bass, or
exactly.
Really?
Yeah, Gemini is on that bass.
I can hear that because we listened to that album on the drive over. It's that real fat, thumpy bass, boom, boom, boom,
with a pick. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear it.
I mean, the studio's cool because you have options, and I have a lot of instruments at my studio, so I have a lot of kind of sonic choices. And when I'm doing a record, it just depends on what the sound is. I mean, I'll happily play a 5-string bass or double bass or whatever, just depending on what the tune needs. I just think of it like that. But Snarky Puppy, I gotta bring one bass. I can't travel around 15 basses,
P bass is the workhorse.
P bass
does
is
just
the
about
one.
anything you want it to.
Yeah, it rocks. It's great.
Yeah. Great. Well, that's all we have for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and